Welcome, everybody, to another episode here on Think Preparedness. It is a channel that has been being brought to you by my channel over at Full Spectrum Survival. We have Chris over at City Prepping, Nate over at Canadian Prepper, and then Cliff at the Urban Prepper. And we're trying to bring together a roundtable to discuss exactly what is happening in our world and how our different views and the different things that affect us on an individual level that we see coming, those things that we really know are going to come down the line in the next 3 months, 6 months, or even a couple of years, how they're going to affect you. Cliff, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Just working and continuing to prep and really focusing on kind of like the squirrels and everything. They're getting ready for the winter and a lot of food preps and rotating out a lot of my previous stash from 2020 and getting them all fresh and ready to go. So
nice. Nate, how are things going on your front?
Not too bad. We had some freezing rain today, so winter is starting to rear its ugly head. I am the most northerly of all of our prepping channels, so you'll catch me talking about winter quite a bit on my channel in the next few months, and that's because a lot of the people who watch my channel have that same problem. So yeah, it's starting to get cold, but it still has been a record warm fall, and normally this time of year we're getting a lot of snow, but it seems to not know what it wants to do. So right now in the next few months, we're just going to be doing a lot of talk about winter preparedness.
Nice. And Chris, you're really close to the global supply chain crisis that we're all facing right now here on the East Coast of the United States. How are things going in your area?
We're good. It's getting ready for Black Friday. I'll take a raft out to the boats and see if I can pick up any loads for anybody if you need something. So
I like that idea.
No, it's things are good here in Southern California. The fire season, fortunately, wasn't as bad as we anticipated. It's still not technically over. We usually kind of push back till the middle of December, so still kind of watching that. But overall, kind of like Cliff, I'm just trying to work on getting my preps ready, rotating, and getting things ready for next year.
You know, I really can't believe that the news that keeps pouring out about this supply chain problem says that there are just more and more ships that are coming to the ports over in California. Florida said, okay, let's just open them up. Now, Florida is experiencing a little bit of a delay on their own. The Port of Georgia is experiencing the same thing. And it reminds me that we do not produce very much here in North America. And that to me is a huge downside. I mean, that's something that is just setting ourselves up for a massive problem. What do you guys see as a potential catalyst to make this worse? Is it, a China, Taiwan problem? Is it just a natural disaster that can make this worse? Or are we just, when you have the cars that really just start backing up on a highway, they just back up and back up and back up, and there's really no end in sight until some equation takes place that allows the people far enough back to push their brakes and not hit the car in front of them. Do you think that's where we're at with the supply chain, and it's just going to take time until we experience some sort of normalization there?
Yeah, I think it's going to take a while because, the world is going to have to adapt. Like, this is the first real test since probably World War II that the global supply chain has truly been disrupted in the way it has. And we're certainly going to see, hopefully, some decoupling, which is going to allow countries to be more independent. But I do think that the difference between now and World War II was that the people then, they were still more self-reliant. And I mean that from a national perspective. So industry was something which was present in all countries. Now, of course, there's so much interdependence. The price of something increasing in one country has repercussions throughout the rest of the world, as we're seeing with gas prices, as we're seeing with some of the anomalous weather events that are happening in China right now. They just had a record snowfall in the north.
Yeah.
And all of these things, including the new Delta outbreak there, which it's hard to really get a good read on what is going on there, plus the already backed up ports. Just a variety of factors right now are coming together to create, yet again, another perfect storm of supply chain disruptions and increases in inflation, increases in prices. So, I don't see this ending anytime soon, especially if there's another event of some sort that blindsides us, which it seems like that could happen in so many ways right now. it's only a matter of time before another black swan presents itself and disrupts things once again. So I think right now we've been warning people on the channel to prepare and get your stuff, before all of this culminated to the point where it is today. So I think a lot of my viewers have, I've been beating that dead horse for a while, but there's still a lot of people out there who are only now talking about what we've been talking about all year with rising prices.
Yeah.
So there's always this lag, it seems, between what we're talking about on prepping channels and what people are realizing in mass. So it's almost like with the pandemic too, when people were starting to get really scared about things, I had already kind of adapted. I was already in the mindset of, okay, I wasn't even really that worried anymore. So there's definitely that lag that the prepping community, because we're so hyper focused on the bad news that's going on, we see it coming far in advance. So
yeah, well, I remember the three of us. I don't think Cliff got in on some of the email chains that I started with you, Chris, and Nate, where we were just starting to see the news come out of China, and we were talking about the things that were going to affect everybody around the world, whether that was control measures or whatever it might have been. And you're right that we kind of see those things beforehand. And you said beating a dead horse, which I think kind of gives into a little bit of the negative junk that is thrown at the preparedness community, because we do see the reality of our world, and we're trying to tell people to get ready, not because everybody's going to get in a car crash, but because some of you want to wear that seatbelt. And so, when you say beating a dead horse, I'm reminded that a lot of people in my community especially have said that they would not be where they are right now if our collective channels had not been warning them to stock up on food, maybe to buy a little gold or silver, to get their house in order and do those things. So I think that we've really provided a spot for those people to take that initiative and say, okay, I'm going to take that burden on myself and I'm going to do something about it. So I appreciate everything that you do there.
There's a lot of viewers that they're first-time viewers. While you might be beating a dead horse with your subscribers, a lot of the viewers that might come, they're new, they're not subscribers to your channel, so it's a new horse to them. So, but as far as the whole the supply chain, everything, you throw a wrench into a large engine, and it's going to mess it up. So I've always worried, like I think Nate was talking about, secondary events. So not as much on the big event that we all kind of see in the news, but something that gets tacked on with it that really makes matters worse. So
yeah,
but yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, Brad, when you sent that email out, what you were referring to earlier, to the three of us. I honestly, when I look back, even when that was happening, when things started off in China, I was very optimistic that it wouldn't be that bad, that, hopefully we would kind of, we wouldn't really see it impact us the way it obviously has in the world for that matter. And oddly enough, while I've been a prepper for years, I know for me, watching the events of the last year and a half has caused me personally to get serious to a whole new level. It's caused me, because again, so many of the things I think we've talked about on the channel for years, on my own channel, it's wild to see these things play out in a very accelerated timeline. Sure. And some of these things I was like, yeah, I could see this happening in a couple of years. Maybe it'll be an isolated event and people should be prepared, but to watch things happen back to back to back to back. And then as you refer to, Nate, it just takes one more thing to get thrown in there and this can only escalate further. And, as we've been researching on my channels, I've been sitting down looking at different things that are coming up on the horizon, things that will impact us next year. It's concerning because unless something changes, unless there's some, I'm hesitant to say unless the government gets involved, because I'm not necessarily looking, for them to come in to fix problems per se. And I don't know if they'll be able to at the level that needs to be, but unless there's some major intervention, a lot of these issues are going to come, they're going to compound. So yeah, it's encouraging to hear that people have heeded our advice, because sometimes, I don't know, I feel like I'm speaking into, an echo chamber and I'm like, is anybody listening and really taking this? But it's so encouraging for my community when I do hear back from people that they actually have applied these things and it's helping.
Well, anybody listening or watching right now, if you could do us a favor and kind of let us know in the comments, what initiative have you taken with your family to get ready? Is there that one event that you really saw and said, okay, well, it would be a good idea to get some extra canned food or, a bag of rice or anything like that. And I think that can help us all kind of grow together to say, okay, well, this is really, something that is allowing people to be ready for the next couple of months. Nate spoke of the Delta outbreak in China. The CDC today is investigating an outbreak of an unknown variant of disease in the University of Michigan, at a college at the University of Michigan. So we have this kind of hyper vigilance that is taking place. And I won't even go into the, I consider almost everything. You guys tell me if you think I'm wrong, but if I don't see concise data, I almost put it into the same realm as a conspiracy for me. So I am seeing lots of information come out of China right now that there was potentially another level of exposure out of a laboratory there, but I don't know that for sure yet. So, when you guys talk about that next catalyst, I almost have a concern that the events that started in 2019 and 2020 with the biological crisis, the financial events, I don't even think we're done with these black swans yet.
No, I'd have to agree with you there. It's so murky right now in terms of trying to decipher what is actually going on. And I'm like you, there's so many studies now, and even when a study is peer reviewed now, it seems to either not get picked up, or then the media will pick up studies that aren't peer reviewed. So
yeah,
it's
right.
really hard to gauge like what's what at this point. I think there still is a shroud of mystery around this whole thing, and it's not resolved yet. There was just a report today of a nursing home in which I think 68 people were infected, 8 were fully jabbed, and
Okay.
eight died. Well, sorry, all of them were fully jabbed. 8
Okay.
died. Okay, so that's a
Okay.
pretty high fatality rate. Now,
Yeah.
there was also, on the topic of jabs, there was also an outbreak in Peru earlier in the year where the fatality rate was much higher, and there was supposedly a different variant there, and there wasn't much talk about it after that. So I still do think that this thing has the potential to explode, and I think just that's evidenced in the seriousness with which China is trying to deal with it right now by locking down whole amusement parks, locking down whole cities. So clearly, even after 2 years of being exposed to this thing, and with all the interventions that exist, they're still willing to go to that length to compromise their economy by shutting
Right.
it down. So obviously, I'm not saying that they know something that we don't. I'm just saying that they clearly see it as a real threat. So, that's it. That's enough to keep me from getting complacent on the issue.
Yeah, and I think for anybody watching who has kind of a viewpoint on that whole ordeal of reasoning or severity or even origination, they just have to realize that everything that's happening right now is being played by players that we have no idea of their level, their realm. So when you've got the government's intervention, the Fed's intervention into the financial crisis, you've got governments around the world and how they either test or expose different levels of disease. There's just so much going on that we have to be vigilant to almost everything. And I have viewers on the channel who said, Brad, I've never considered a bulletproof backpack before, but this was the first year that I was like, a bulletproof backpack's not really that bad of an idea. And so I think we're just reaching that next kind of level in a social manner that everyone's hyper vigilant, and we just have to get ready to the best of our ability for whatever happens.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, even from a financial perspective. I know this is an extreme example, but this past weekend, I got to sit down with some good friends. They are missionaries in Haiti, and they were explaining the different issues playing out down there. And as the country has continued to devolve, and kidnappings are becoming more common.
Okay.
Financial, people are having problems getting gas, water, food. The things are spiraling, and you're seeing the level of violence tick up with it. And it's interesting sitting down and listening, because by no means am I even equating the two countries, even they're not at the same level, clearly. But it was fascinating listening to, hear a country that was somewhat relatively peaceful prior to several events playing out in the last few years, and how quickly things escalated. And, the thought of having a bulletproof vest, I don't think I'd be, personally, I don't see myself in a situation where I need to carry that. I hope that it doesn't get to that anytime soon. But nonetheless, there was an incident. Again, this is anecdotal that I ran into recently where I was in a gas station. My entire life, I've never had anybody confront me or try to challenge me on anything. And I don't think I'm the kind of person that someone would look as trying to start a fight. But I had a guy just randomly out of the blue try to start something with me. And I just kind of laughed it off because I don't know if he was looking for somebody to kind of take the bait. And I just couldn't, I couldn't tell, are we just getting more and more on edge? And again, I know it's anecdotal, but it's made me think twice when I go into places to kind of be a little, continue to keep paying attention, situational awareness.
Yeah, I think
do you know who I am? I'm city prepping. What do you?
Right. Do you even know who I am? No, it's just odd. It was I was the guy, and I'm not a big guy. I'm 5'7" on a good day. And, he was shorter than me. And I was a little surprised. I was like, sorry, I'm not looking for a fight. I just kind of laughed it off and walked away. But I just thought it was odd. I was like, what's up with the tension? And again, I know it's anecdotal, but I don't know. I say all that because, that could have been.
I think like you said, it is anecdotal, but at the same time, when you start to see it happen across the country, you start to kind of put the pieces together that, and we talked about this a little bit before the show started about how the crisis events that are taking place are really affecting mental health. Here in my local area, I just watched the police department post a Facebook ad, or not ad, a Facebook post, and they said that people were coming in and they were knocking on the doors, then they were jiggling the handle, and then if no one came, they were trying to breach the house. And then just today, one of my neighbors comes up to me and says, "Hey, do you know this person?" I didn't know them. And they said she just had somebody last night after their husband left, come to the back door, knocked on the door, nobody answered, and tried to jiggle the handle open. And I live in a very rural area. Everyone here carries a Second Amendment protection tool. I mean, you wouldn't think that people would be acting so ignorantly, or are they just reaching that point where they don't make good decisions anymore?
Yeah, I think Nate said the word. I mean, at least locally for where I'm at, a lot of people are more brazen with a lot of these things. And I was in a local community meetup for some gravestone cleaning. Anyway, the police were providing a report, and we've been having a lot of locally bad incidents where people are just daring the police to come out to do car chases with them. And then because they know they can only chase them after a certain point, and then they pull over and antagonize them and have it do it again and stuff. And we're seeing a lot more of that kind of stuff. Arson has been pretty popular over the last few weeks in our area, and the burned our local church. And so it's pretty common, but I think brazen's the word right now. And all of this feels like a master chess game, and we're all just kind of pawns in it. So
I talked to a propane company today because honestly, we've been having the hardest time. We're filled up on propane, but I wanted a job done. And I've been calling around 6 different propane companies. Finally got a hold of one that I've been doing a lot of business with over the course of the last couple of years. And I asked them what was going on. They said they're really at their wits' end, because not only is propane about to go up 18 to 22%, which they're going to pass that on to the customer, but everybody is in a rush. It seems like everybody all at once said, I need propane, I need natural gas, I need to think about keeping my gas tank filled up. And so I think we might have our own kind of like a microcosm of division taking place. A lot of times I'll talk about the corrupt corporate haves and have-nots versus the employees, but I think we're starting to see the preparedness haves and have-nots kind of wake up. And so everyone's saying, I need food, I need water, I need medicine, and trying to put away those preparedness items. And then if we throw into that something like a China-Taiwan ordeal, imagine what will happen to our supply chain. What will Walmart look like if we're not getting any items because China refuses to send items to a country that is bombing them for taking something that they think they rightfully own?
Yeah, and I can say too, on the distributor front, because as some of you know, I do have a website, CanadianPreparedness.com.
Let me write this down. Hold on.
Yeah.
What was that again?
What was it?
I got beat that dead horse enough on this channel. But no, the distributors are hoarding, and myself as a dealer, I don't hoard because, usually what I sell, I only buy a safe amount of stuff that I know I can sell within a reasonable time frame. But a lot of my distributors, the shortages are still there, the price increases are still there, and people are hoarding stuff because they anticipate that there's going to be, continued delays at the ports, or in anticipation of the price hikes. So everybody's stocking up before these raise their prices as the manufacturing and the labor costs go up. So yeah, we're definitely right now at a point where, in the movies where the car goes over the cliff or the bridge and it's just hanging on, and there's a bird that kind of sits on the car, and if the bird leaves, the car crashes.
Yeah,
I really do feel that we're that close to total collapse of, maybe that's a little bit dramatic, but
total collapse.
We're not that far. We're not that far from a major economic shakedown. If something else were to happen now, in light of, all this distributor hoarding and price gouging and stuff that's going to happen in 2022, it wouldn't take much right now for it to just spiral. And then, you're going to see more crime, more arson, like Cliff said, more drug use, which is going to lead to just more crazy behavior. And, people, what's that saying by Max Kaiser? When people have nothing left to lose, they lose it. And you'll see that more and more as people become more desperate. They'll just become more hopeless and brazen, and they'll be rattling doors even though they know they could probably get shot, because it's for them it's probably better than the alternative.
Honestly, I feel your sentiment when you say total collapse, because to me that doesn't mean you're looking out from a burned down skyscraper and there's nothing there. Total collapse for me means the end of everything as we knew it. So the end of being able to go to the store and feeling safe, the end of all those things as we knew them back in 2018. And I think that a lot of people in the preparedness community, sometimes they get stuck on that mental picture of what a real crisis looks like. And they expect when you go to the store, if there's really a supply chain crisis, that there's absolutely nothing left in the store, when in fact, if you, like your friends in Haiti that do the missionary work, Chris, they know you go to a store and you're going to find some things, but the supply chain is just completely, it's completely broken. So you're not going to have
premium.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're getting kind of compounding issues right now where you're starting to pay a premium. We haven't even realized the fact that just a couple of months ago, the cost to send something on a semi truck from California to Florida was around $3,900, and the distributors now are charging $12,000 to $15,000. That money, that extra money, is going to affect your pocket. It's going to come out of your pocket once it gets to that supermarket. So I think that we're just at the end of where we knew things were and how they existed, and kind of trying to find our own normal to go from here.
A lot of this
what
feels,
I'm afraid of. Go ahead.
I was going to say, a lot of this feels to me, it's like boiling the frog, where I can't tell the difference between when normal was and when the craziness started, basically. So I always kind of imagine that during an SHTF situation, I would know when that happened, but it just feels it's such a gradual progression towards it that we're probably already in it, and we just and it just feels like that way to me. I guess that was one things I've had to kind of adjust towards with my own preparedness measures is I thought that I knew when it was SHTF, but it feels like I don't know if I'm going to be able to recognize it as quickly as I thought.
Gotcha. That's a good talking point.
So
what were you saying?
I just want to ask Cliff, when you look out, because Seattle has a pretty big port there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So when you look out, what's the situation look like there with shipping containers?
It looks just like normal to me, but I try not to go to the piers too often. I just drive through there for work purposes. And actually, to be honest, I try to avoid downtown as much as I can, unless I absolutely need to go there. But it seems fairly normal. Although, I don't know what it's out as far as past the Puget Sound area. So.
Gotcha.
Might be a viral video for you if you discover that there's like 50 ships offshore or something.
Look what I found. Yeah, people totally be interested.
Take my drone out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Chris, what were your missionary friends' finding in Haiti? Was it hard for them to do their work in those environments, or the changes that are taking place there?
It's interesting. I mean, I just kind of listened to them and heard their stories, and they've a lot of the mission agencies in Haiti are pulling out female, the wives and the children. A lot of the husbands are staying behind to continue to work because of the security issues. And a lot of the stories that they told me were very, very similar to what I experienced in Afghanistan. A lot of situational awareness. You have to be careful where you drive, how many times you drive that way, because someone's going to begin to figure out your patterns. Just staying on the outskirts of town as much as possible. And, they're seeing obviously a lot of supply shortages, just not terribly different than what we are. But, they don't know if it's transitory, these issues that they're facing. Again, when I listen to their stories, it's for them, it's been interesting. They've been in Haiti for a while, kind of looking into the United States and watching how things have played out here in the last few years. That's been very difficult for them to watch because it's not, by no means, again, were they trying to compare what they're seeing there to here, but they were surprised to see the instability and the other issues coming up in the country. And so, I don't know, having lived in Afghanistan, I saw a lot of these things firsthand. And, again, as I've shared probably many times or I think I shared last time, and we really have no idea how good we have it here in the West. And, just to be able to flick on a switch for electricity or water, the conveniences that we have are amazing. And I think that's going to be a really tough transition as we begin to see continued power grid issues, work shortages. I think we're going to be inconvenienced a lot more than we're used to.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, you brought something up that I think could be a controversial thing, but I actually want to note each one of your thoughts from that. You said the wives and the children are being pulled out of Haiti because of security issues. How do you think the United States will handle gender differences as far as security issues go, and if the country continues to get more dangerous as a whole? Do you think that that's a viable idea for husbands and wives to talk about? Or do you think that that's something that, because of our social climate, that you can't even say, the children should stay home or the wife should stay home? No, but now I know it's now I know it's good. Okay, I'll go first.
Let's commit career suicide.
I might stay off of that one.
Cliff's like, I better just go make a sandwich and go to sleep on the couch tonight.
Let me go
ahead
first
if you want to. I'd like to hear your thoughts so I can see what I can say and not to say.
Okay, so I definitely think that as a husband and wife, it's something that needs to be discussed, because if not for complete changes to how you handle day-to-day life, we have to accept our strengths and weaknesses on an individual level, gender aside. If it was us and Nate's like, hey, let me go do that lifting, I'm going to be like, okay, Nate, you can go do that lifting. I don't mind that at all. Or if he's like, Chris, will you do the technology? Yeah, absolutely. If he's like, Brad, will you just talk and not do anything else? I'll be like, all right, I got you. And so I think if on a husband wife or kind of relationship level, we can discuss our strengths and weaknesses, and it makes sense to make changes, then I think we need to not get caught up in social or societal norms and just make those changes that are good for our family members.
Well, I did a panel of 7 female preppers probably 3 or 4 years ago, and it's something I'd like to revisit now in light of all the changes since then, culturally and socially. But I'm pretty much of the perspective that when things start to regress socially and when the shit starts hitting the fan, people are going to likely revert to age-old traditions, because let's face it, biologically, we have evolved to be a certain way for thousands and thousands of years. And it's only in recent times when this abundant society and technology has allowed us to have all this crossover and overlap. And this is not saying this is something I particularly want, or it's not a question of preference. It's only about the reality of what's going to happen. Let's say, an armed intruder came into your home. I'm sure Kelly is probably trained, but the average household, it's going to be the guy who jumps into action. Hopefully, maybe nowadays maybe it's not, but I'm guessing in 80% of those situations, at least, that's going to be the natural unfolding of things. And in an SHTF predicament where things are getting bad, it's only going to be intensified. So I think we're quickly going to go back to, I'm not saying it's going to go back to, people have no rights, certain groups don't have rights and things of that nature. I just think for that particular, now that we're on the topic of it, and a lot of those women that I interviewed seem to be generally in agreement with respect to that, although some of the younger ones had a bit more diverse perspectives on what the gender roles were in the relationship. But I think they all agreed that, come crunch time, clearly, men are engineered for war, right? So that's just the reality that we have to accept. And
I think that
books,
I think that a lot of times
the case again.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times people put a negative spin on that. Like that doesn't mean a woman doesn't carry a gun and a knife and can't defend herself. I think everybody, it's not all, like you said, Cliff's going to go make a sandwich. It's not all just make a sandwich and sweep the floor. This is a different world that we're entering into, especially if we experience worsening social conditions here. Chris, I can't wait to hear what, Nate already said biological and he said evolution. So we might as well just shut the channel down now because it's over. So I want to hear what you have to say.
Hey, at least the black guys did it.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
We're all right. It evens out.
Oh, poor Cliff. I'm sorry, Cliff.
No, it's funny because I was kind of talking about that tonight. My mother-in-law, we're in the car, we're driving home, and we were talking about just kind of our marriages and kind of who is the dominant one in the marriage. And it's funny because, she's like, who do y'all think in your marriage is kind of the more, because I grew up in a very kind of like what Nate was describing, a very traditional home where, it was, the kind of the 1950s profile of a marriage, it was a man and, he had his role and the wife was silent and submissive. And I saw that firsthand growing up. Okay. And going into my marriage, I respect my wife, her opinion, her views. We take an equal position on a lot. I think there's some things that I will naturally gravitate toward more than her. And we both have our strengths and weaknesses. And I feel like we have a good we complement. All that to say, I think, I don't know. I'm not saying this from a sexist perspective as much as I just think men, and again, I know it's a broad brush generalization. It's not always the case, but I think men, our natural inclination is to serve in a protecting role. And I'm not saying that we're way more capable. I mean, there's some, women of, physically, it's not just that, but I think it's in our nature. But I know, my wife is extremely protective of our children, but I don't know. I think for men, if something
I like what you said there. I kind of like what you said there that, Nate picked up on it too on, men were built to go and die in war. And you said that you didn't want to kind of generalize everything because trust me, if Kelly can get on some growth hormones and get shoulders bigger than me, then she's going first. And I have no problem with that. So I think that it is on an individual level, but then also, you just have to kind of take it as it goes. And kind of going back to the original question that brought us to this controversial topic. And that was, do you think that we'll experience kind of those, and Chris, this is what I want to get from you. Do you think that we will experience in a worsening United States of America or worsening North America, kind of a moving back to that sort of mentality or tribalism at best?
Can I just jump in here before Chris? Yeah. I just want to conclude so I don't totally cancel myself. I want to say that in spite of the fact that I do believe that that's how we're genetically wired, I do think that it's more of a mental thing also, especially if you're talking about training. Like there's a lot of women, and I'm not just saying this to have an out or save myself at all. There's a lot of women I would rather have with a firearm by my side than guys who are much bigger. And because I know they can keep a cool head, and I know that in a crisis situation, they're going to be able to keep it together. So I just wanted to say that there is an equalizing component to all this, and it's the mental, especially when you're talking about the tools that we can now leverage. I mean, we're not living in the caveman era where muscle matters with respect to self-defense. We're talking about how well can you wield technology, and a woman can do that just as capably as a man. and
Yeah,
in some cases better. So
the first woman, the first female just finished her sniper school. You know, it was a huge bit of history, which I think is awesome. I mean, you know, go to it.
What I'm hearing here, it doesn't sound like we're talking gender roles or anything. This sounds like I think things will move more towards a skill-based thing. So if whoever has the best skills for that particular job, whatever it is, if it's tactical based or if it's food based or if it's medical based, then that person does. It doesn't really matter what they are. I can only really speak on behalf of myself. I don't, because there's a lot of different people out there. But that said, I know that I'll always have to carry the trash out because I'm the strongest one of the family. So that's my job. But
that's your
Well, for anybody watching, if it looks like this, what we're saying right now does not make sense to what we were just saying, it's because we edited out a whole bunch of what we started with. You know, we started talking before the recording about natural disasters a little bit, about the things that are happening in China. Nate brought up here. What do you guys see as far as natural disasters role in the next 6 or 12 months? Do you think that we're going to see like crop shortages or, you know, those things take place? Are we going to have freezes where we don't usually have freezes? Are we going to experience hotter than usual summers next month? Kind of what are we looking at there?
Well, trying to predict weather is obviously a dangerous thing. I mean, there's clearly, and I hate to bring the subject up because again, I know it's controversial in the community talking about anthropogenic climate change. You know, I'll just put it out there. You know, I've studied it. I understand it. I know a lot of times it gets moved into a political circle of if you take this position, then you must be in this position, you know, political camp. For me, I look at it from an apolitical perspective. It's just what the scientific data is showing us. Having said that, you know, for me, I'm beginning to get more and more concerned about the future if we cannot keep up with huge temperatures variations, extreme heat or extreme cold when it's not supposed to. So for me, that concerns me greatly and the impact long term. And I'm not necessarily just concerned about the next 6 to 12 months, but again, when I'm looking the next 3 to 4 to 6 to 10 years, to me, it's becoming more and more concerning.
I don't think you can deny it to the point where, you know,
you'd be surprised.
Yes, I believe you can delude yourself to it. But, you know, we have an entire island that's out there that everyone's going to have to move away from. It's gone. You know, the island is going to no longer be inhabitable. I think there was something like a couple thousand residents. But when you look at those types of things, and I don't think you have to, the problem that a lot of people get stuck in, the trap they get stuck in, at least in my experience, is they don't want to internalize blame. And they'd much rather say that it doesn't exist than take some responsibility, but also be aware that Jeff Bezos, all these, a lot of high-ranking politicians and corporate goons, I will say, of course, not Jeff Bezos, but everybody else, you know, they just flew in jets everywhere to this climate meeting. You know, they had huge processions of limos and everybody else kind of rolling with them to talk about how climate is a problem. I think that if the solution doesn't start all the way at the top, there's kind of no hope for the solution really reaching to a point where it matters for you and me.
And they get the beachfront property too. That doesn't help with it.
So. Yeah, it doesn't help. Right.
The oceans are rising.
The big yacht. Yeah. He did buy a big yacht though, just as a bug out vehicle in case the island was submerged by rising sea levels.
You know, you have an in with the bunker builder, right, Nate?
Well, I think we all kind of do if we wanted to. Ron over at Atlas, yeah.
Okay. But you know him out of everybody. Yeah, the best.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, what people seen on my channel is what I know, basically.
Okay. What would you say in your experience of talking with him, and for maybe anyone who came from any of our other channels, is there really did the fire get under the butts of the rich and famous to build some bunkers?
Yeah, I mean, according to Ron, well, for starters, you have to be rich now to buy a bunker because the price of steel and labor has gone up to the point where it's really prohibitive for anybody who's not on the 7-figure, payroll. Yeah. And there's notably an increase in bunker building, and even just with people like going back on the point that you were making about increased vigilance amongst people. Some people who watch my channel you're aware of the running inside joke about the communist cameraman. And it's just, I bug my hipster cameraman all the time about his manner of dress and stuff, but I don't mean it in a derogatory way. It's just something we joke about. And even he has gone out and got a gun license. And it's just incredible the amount of people on that end of the spectrum who are now secretly prepping and are really starting to take prepping seriously. Like, I have friends who are pretty devout leftists. Okay, I have friends from all ends of the political spectrum.
Yeah.
And like, I have cop friends, I have social worker friends, everybody. I don't care. I'm a moderate. But what I found is that I got people calling me for like, hey, I need to get, several years worth of food supply. Can you hook me up? And so to me, that's like, is that a sign that things are getting worse, or is it a sign that people are just behind and they're only now realizing how frail the system is? So I haven't really determined what is what, but it appears to me that, sometimes when the herd starts moving in a certain way, it's a sign that there is something bad coming. Yeah. So, on the topic of bunkers being built, people are throwing money at that stuff, and whether that's just to get rid of the money before it's worthless and inflation eats it away, that's a possibility too. It's definitely going to add to your property value to have a underground bunker, which will last many generations. So there's notably an increase in just preparedness, and it's surprising for us because we've been immersed in this subculture for years. Yeah. So I have kind of a normalcy bias with it. And when I see other people finally getting into it, I'm like, didn't you realize this? Like, didn't you know, like, this was a possibility, like our supply chain could be compromised? And it's almost like now that we're coming out of this thing, well, supposedly, people are more paranoid than they were. Like, it's staying. Like, the fear is staying. It's not dissipating. It's only ramping up. So that either tells me that there really is just a huge lag with the average person and the realization of reality, or that's like kind of like one of those intuitive senses that herds get before a tornado comes or an earthquake is going to strike. I don't know what it is yet. Maybe you guys have some thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, look at that stampede recently at that music concert. All it took was a couple of people freaking out, and then the whole crowd starts running. You've got hundreds of people trampled. I think that's a little bit of what we're experiencing. I was very surprised. I looked at my community analytics recently because I had seen a lot more comments from female prepper channels or female homestead channels. I was like, whoa, that's great, because it used to be that my viewers were predominantly male, and now so I have 40 to 45% of my viewers are female. And to me, that was a huge difference. I was like, wow, that's really awesome. Yeah. But surprisingly, I've had more and more women come on and say, my husband won't get involved in prepping. And so I think that we're just starting to see really a change here in who cares about what happens next,
I think it takes some kind of spark for them to get into prepping. For me, it was around 2008, 2009, where I was worried about economic things. But I think right now there's certain people that are, it's just catching them right now. And I imagine that all of us probably weren't preppers our entire lives. It took something to really get us going on it. And people probably thought that in the .com crash of the early 2000s or whenever. So I think for a lot of people, the spark that's going to start them into the world of emerging preparedness, even though if they probably don't want to call it that because there's a negative stigma with the word prepping. But I think with everyone, it just takes some kind of spark, and for some people it happens sooner than others. So.
Okay.
My concern though is that, like you said, Cliff, I mean, it's these events, the 2000, the 2008, and people realize, okay, this sucks. We're going to go through it. But then at least up until I would say about a year and a half ago, looking at different events that have happened in their lifetime, I'm like, well, this sucks, but we're going to come out on the other side. Yeah. And there was always a sense of optimism, at least in my mind. 2000, on September 11th, horrible day, but I didn't feel like we were down and out. And I don't know, I maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but the more I sit down and study these things and look at what's coming, I'm like, geez, where's the light at the end of the tunnel on this? And, it's becoming more and more. My concern is that once people, that lag effect, that they begin to realize, things may not improve, or things may not go back to life before March of 2020. Life may be different moving forward. My concern is that people trying to catch up, kind of like what you're saying, Brad, that stampede effect. And I think once people begin to realize, and again, I know that sounds incredibly pessimistic, but I'm having a hard time personally, and maybe this is where I have to be really careful how much I do study. It's like, where's the light at the end of the tunnel out of all this? That's one of the challenges I've been facing.
There was a report recently from one of the major U.S. universities that foretold, based on their analytics of consumer confidence, each major financial crisis that we've had. And before the dot-com bubble had hit, before the 2008 financial crisis, it spiked. And then it spiked again in 2020. But surprisingly enough, it's spiking more right now than it was then. So I think that, like you're saying, Chris, that you are starting to see a complete loss in confidence in the entire idea of recovery. And because of that, I think a lot of people are generally getting scared. And we all know that scared people don't necessarily make the best of friends and neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Curious, Cliff, are you seeing any, like in your own, you don't have to give a lot of details, but are you seeing anything in your own personal relationships of people coming to you asking for preparedness advice who maybe otherwise wouldn't a year ago?
Not really, but only because they've always been coming to me about preparedness advice. But especially when March of 2020, I think people were coming to me. Some of them may have previously made fun of me for doing it, or thought it was a weird thing. But I find that people do come, or they're more supportive of the channel, and they're following all of your channels after I bring that to them. I don't think there's too much of an uptick, but I think it's a constant thing for me. I try to get out into the community a lot, and I talk to a lot of people. I talked to Boy Scouts last week, and we did a whole. I've been doing that for a couple weeks now. We have another one on Wednesday just on emergency preparedness, on putting together. We're putting together an overlanding kit for their vehicles, and we're talking about how to evacuate someone. We're putting SAM splints on and stuff. And I think people are just more accepting of it now than they might have been like in 2018, because I think they see it real now. And again, the main thing that a common tie that I get with a lot of people is just your pantries. Like previously, if you had a really cool garage or something, you'd show your garage off, and now it's like if you have a cool pantry set up, like that's a cool now. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Now,
I was going to say also one of the things that I found like personal kind of almost I felt guilty about having some of these preps and some of these things in place when I knew that friends that I had were struggling, or were kind of down and out, or didn't have masks, or didn't have frozen meat and stuff like that. And I felt, and I didn't really anticipate that. The common prepper thought process is, oh, well, we told you so, I got the last laugh type thing. But I felt a personal sense of almost feel like I was feeling guilty about it, which I wasn't really expecting. So I did try to help some people early on, especially with masks and stuff, but you can't really help everyone. So that was a kind of an internal thing that I wasn't really prepared for at the start of all of this, when people are coming to you.
well, that's kind of the thing, in my opinion, about the community and the life that we live, is like when everybody was short on masks, and the University of Florida and a couple other universities said that their halyard, which is the blue surgical wrap that they put the surgical tools into, and then they put it in the autoclave to make it safe. It filters better than an N95. And so Kelly and I went out, we found some, bought it, and Kelly started making masks for local nurses and stuff so that they could have something while they had a supply issue.
Oh, did we lose Brad?
I think so.
Yeah,
He'll
he'll probably be back on.
Yeah, I think
there you go, Brad. You were out for a second. You were saying Kelly's making masks for the local nurses, and you cut out.
They shut that down.
Done. Yeah.
Turn it off.
Yeah.
I think being able to be in a position to help other people is kind of one of the main reasons that we do what we do, and especially our friends and family, or people who are just not in a position of their own. And then that brings its own idea, something I brought up to you guys before the channel, before the recording started, and that was jealousy. I had viewers saying that their neighbors were jealous of them or their friends were jealous of them. And I had a couple of people mention to me, hey, could you talk on this and kind of how can we combat this? Do you just shut up and not tell anybody anything? Or do you kind of risk the fact that people might be jealous of the fact that you either have the money to prepare or have the foresight to prepare, and then how it affects them as they reach a point where they can't?
Yeah, you were mentioning earlier about jealousy, and it's interesting to see how that might play out in the future as people's priorities become change from wants to needs.
Yeah.
And I'm not really seeing jealousy so much yet, but certainly, like I said, seeing more people starting to get interested in preparedness. So
Okay.
I think that's a good thing overall. And I think it's a little, some people are late to the party, but at the same time, I think, for some of the big things we're talking about, if this situation resolves itself, then a lot of the crises that we're facing are long-term, whether it's climate related, the global conflict situation, which appears to be brewing. Like we were talking before we went live here tonight about a Russian missile
Belarus.
test.
Yeah. Right.
Well,
Oh,
there
yeah.
was
Okay.
that
Yeah.
situation, but the Russians shot down a satellite, apparently, in some kind of military test, which has caused what they're calling a rare debris generating event.
Yeah.
And so this is just another one of these anomalous one-off grid down scenarios, which if all the satellites were compromised by some kind of space war like this,
Jeez, could you imagine?
we'd be without navigation, we would be without communication, without weather. So there would be a lot of, it'd be a huge chain reaction. So I think that the global conflict scenario, the climate scenarios, these are all things that are going to come to fruition later on, unfortunately, because we have to face reality that the China-Taiwan situation is not going to go away. Right. And it's probably not going to be resolved. I don't think how it could possibly be resolved by peaceful means. It's just too geostrategic of a spot for them to let go. And they realize that they can see, 2030 is not far. So
yeah, right.
I think in the long run, what I'm trying to say is that you're still early to the party if you get in right now. Like you're still kind of on the up end of the curve, but there is a lot of people who are, at least to the pandemic thing, they're kind of late in that respect because that's ongoing. But so yeah, that could create some feelings, and I'm really starting to focus on the gray man more. I know something that you said at one point, Brad, was about how you like the masks because they give you anonymity. Right. And that's something that I'm starting to appreciate more too. As much as I like it when people recognize me out in public, I'm starting to really want to focus more on the gray man strategy and just blending in. And unfortunately, I got my truck decked out, all American prepper style.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mascot for the channel in a way. But, at some point, I have to get really practical if things do start to get really bad in terms of, being mindful of the fact that you want to help people, but you can't help everyone. And you don't want to be a target. So you have to balance those things. And I think the situation that we were in last year, it was such that it wasn't that bad that you couldn't help people out. It was a situation, it wasn't like a full-blown collapse where it was every man for himself and you had to hoard everything because your life depended on it. But 9 meals from anarchy, that whole line of thinking is a reality. And if it came down to that, you would have to be very conscious of who you helped, and you'd have to be very calculated in terms of who you help, because those would probably be the people who you were closest to thereafter. So
yeah, I think with jealousy, you get it. I mean, the bottom line is it comes down to, what we always talk about on the channel is just, OPSEC, keeping your mouth shut. Don't tell people what you have. I mean, the four of us are very public figures. If things really went sideways in a prolific way, I mean, fortunately, I don't get out too often. I mean, I'm not out in public a lot. I don't have a high profile, but people know who I am, and I get asked that question a lot. I mean, Why are you exposing yourself on this channel, letting people know you're prepared? And I don't know. For me, I look at it from and I don't mean to go on a tangent here, Brad, but I mean,
Sure.
I do look at a responsibility, and I feel an obligation to try to help and teach as many people as I can. I hope nothing bad befalls myself or my family, but I think it's important for those that do prepare, that they do, that they are careful, that they observe OPSEC, and like Nate said, the gray man strategy, not letting other people know, because when people figure it out, you become a target.
Yeah,
and
right.
When I was overseas, that was the saying, beware the fat man in the skinny land. It's like, something's different about that guy. He stands out. You don't want to.
Now, Chris, you did a video recently, and I think it just actually came out maybe yesterday, where you're talking about inflation. Where do you see the direction of inflation? I mean, we know that game is not over. We're just, kind of in the initial to maybe mid stage of that. So where do you see that kind of leading us for anybody who maybe didn't catch that video?
Yeah. So what we did in the video is we tried to, and what we always try to do on the channel is strip politics out of the discussion, but yet reveal, what's being discussed, what we're being told, and we try to analyze what really is going on. Of course, we all know the big report that came out, stating that CPI is only at such and such percent, that it's not that bad, and that's what we looked at the videos. When you pull certain data, you curate certain data, you can bend information to make it look, you can present the best way possible, right?
Sure, right.
But the common person, the everyday person, going to the pump, going to the store, doing these things, they're seeing a much different story than just small percentage increases. So the question is, where's all this heading? I mean, there's with inflation, and that's what concerns me the most. There's a lot of factors that we're going to be doing some videos on here pretty soon that they're only probably going to amplify this issue unless something corrects or changes. So, it's at the end of the day, I'm having to honestly take some major assessments of my own home, our own preps, and what can we do now to mitigate this only getting worse. And hey, who knows, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this will all correct itself, but I know that's what the term is being used as transitory, right? This is temporary. Right. But after Yellen stated that, you saw what happened with the markets. They dropped, people are buying up bonds. It's like, it's probably the opposite of what they're telling us.
If I had to tell my dog what was going to happen right before that last shot at the vet, I'd say it'll all be over soon. It's only going to hurt for a minute.
That was what we said in the video is, is like, look, I mean, it's when a man's dying, you don't tell him he's dying, right? It's like, hey, everything's okay. We're going to get through this, and I feel like, obviously, in the defense of the government, and I'll take the devil's advocate here. Position. Clearly, if they were to come out and just say, this is all horrible, this is just going to get, here's what, well, the markets would tank, and it would only exacerbate the recovery process. So I get what they're doing. Let's just put it that way. But all that to say, I think the person that goes to the store, the pump, or whatever, they know that it's in their best interest to try to prepare as much as they can.
Yeah, right. Now, Cliff, you did a video about perishables, and we were talking a lot about people who are kind of just getting into things right now. What do you think? What was like the main mission of that video, and what do you think people should steer away from if they're just now getting into stocking their pantry?
Well, starting off first before going into the perishables, I feel about the people that feel like they're too late to the party now. I feel the same way with getting into cryptocurrency and stuff like that. So I don't think it's too late. The focus of that particular video is that I think in the preparedness community, we put so much emphasis on non-perishable foods. But I felt that especially like in March 2020, when I wanted to stock up, I didn't need non-perishable. I didn't need more rice and wheat and stuff like that. I needed like the fresh produce and the proteins and meats. And so I just hadn't really thought about like the shelf life of perishable items. So basically on those ones, there's, some items store better in the freezer and some items actually store better, in colder than room temperature in the dark. And then some items store better in the refrigerator. The ones that seem to last, and it was interesting to hear the comments from folks that were, had, they would get a certain type of milk because it has the longest shelf life. I'm not a big fan of powdered milk as much. And I do like the shelf stable individual milks that you could get for like school lunches, for example.
And the powdered milk.
But like, I know that at Costco, for example, the organic Costco milk seems to have the longest shelf life that I found so far, based off of the comments, where it's like 3 months or whatever. So yeah, so for me, what I did for that particular concept, I was looking and researching on what happened in the Great Depression, what's the foods that they would stock that were perishable, and for a lot of the cuisines that were cooked there. So, the potatoes and onions and things like that. So people still were using various ingredients for their cooking in the Great Depression where things were scarce. And so what kind of cheese to go with, going with a Parmesan over a cheddar because it has a longer shelf life that you could probably up to a year or so. So that was that particular video, but it's pretty interesting. I didn't know that potatoes you could store a potato in the freezer for over a year, basically, if you cook the potato, but you can't store raw potatoes in the freezer because they don't hold as well. So there's a lot of cool, interesting things like that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you were talking about not being a fan of powdered milk. That's literally all we use here in the house is powdered milk, just for its cholesterol. I like the lower cholesterol, the powdered milk versus like a whole milk, even though before, I started to have some gallbladder pain. When was it? About 2 years ago, and worst pain of my life. I mean, I got into an accident, got hit by a car on my bicycle, busted my spine, had a traumatic brain injury, busted my zygote open, split my liver with one of my 5 ribs that broke. It was a huge mess. And that
when did that happen?
About 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, that gallbladder pain was worse than that accident. And it was just horrendous. Something about my brain did not like that. And so I made a diet change and we switched to that kind of thing. But, I find myself more and more being encouraged by, when you guys talk about making healthy choices or doing, kind of making those different decisions, kind of thinking through every lifestyle choice or even purchase that you make. Nate, I know that you probably more than any of us are kind of geared in towards living your life, as healthy as you can. What would you kind of give somebody, whether, I used to be 245 pounds like 8 years ago or 9 years ago. What would you give somebody who's like, not there yet, and they're maybe just trying to take those couple of steps? What would you say to them? Is it just eat right, or, buy better things, buy a protein shake? What would you say is their best course of action to get their body ready to better handle the future?
Yeah, I mean, that's that's several video series in itself. But, one thing that maybe doesn't get enough attention is that first day. If you're on a diet, the first day is so pivotal, because the first day you run a calorie deficit is the hardest to really lock in. Once you lock in that first day and you get that momentum and you actually wake up the next morning, you feel light, you don't really feel famished. You feel hungry before you go to bed because you get those night demons, and you want to get the dopamine fix. But when you wake up in the morning after having fasted and having delayed that gratification the night before, you feel really good about yourself. And so if you can it starts with the first bite. It really does start with the first time when you say, I'm not going to eat that thing that's not good for me. And the first battle you win like that, it's incredible how that is what causes the chain reaction. And a lot of people don't get to that point. Like, they'll make little concessions. They'll say, I'll just have a little nibble or something like that. So, for me, cutting weight is relatively easy because I understand it's just a matter of pure choice. But I could see how other people, if you're not visualizing yourself, you have to visualize yourself and remember that, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, if you're obese right now, you wouldn't have been 100 years ago, because there wouldn't have been the abundance of resources that we have now that would allow you to get that weight, or the abundance of carbohydrates and saturated trans fats and all that stuff. So, the best advice I could give people is psychological, because actually doing it is not hard. I mean, you cut your calories and you try to eat as clean as possible. That's really all there is to it. There's not rocket science. But it's the will to not give in to that first urge, and just to know, like, play the tape through tell yourself, if I eat this cookie right now, how am I going to feel after I eat the cookie? Is it worth that feeling for me to eat the cookie?
Yeah,
You know,
I feel
and
so good.
you'll realize that it's not. And actually, when you say fuck it, I'm okay. We're gonna edit that.
Okay, now you just messed up the whole channel. There goes
Yeah.
monetization.
Okay,
Oh,
that's the
geez.
one
All right,
edit we have to do
editing.
in
I got to
this
write
video.
this time down.
Yeah, I just got so passionate that I just swore and we edited that out of the video. But you know, when you just say screw it, I'm not going to do it. You actually, in that moment, you feel really good about yourself too. So that's the instant reward you get from not doing the
Giving
fast reward.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know,
My wife
all I
and
can say is right now, just, eat really healthy. And we're going to be doing a video on that in the
sweet.
future here, in the near future, about, you know, 5 things you can do to really get your health back under control.
We just started intermittent fasting. What do you?
Yeah, I was
what's
going to
your take
mention
on
that.
that?
That's kind of what I practice. And I think that's what a lot of people, it's pretty trendy now to do. And basically it just means getting all your calories in a short window.
Yeah,
And
6 hour,
having a period throughout the day where you're depriving yourself. But the thing, and this is why avoiding the first bite is so important, because after you get over that first wave of craving for something, it goes away and you have more energy and you're out, you're doing stuff, you're keeping busy, and you're actually going to have more energy when you're doing the intermittent fasting, which is just consolidating all your calories into like a 6 hour window. Some people do it in an 8 hour window, and that allows your body to start using its fat stores as opposed to just the glycogen and the carbohydrates that you have in your body at that point in time. So this is why it's so important to go to bed not starving, but a little bit hungry, because that's when you're really going to burn calories. And another great hack is, now that it's winter here anyways, not for some of you guys, lucky Californians and Floridians down there, but you know, if we just turn the temperature down a couple degrees, so we're just a little bit chilly, you're actually burning a lot of calories when you're in thermogenesis, when your body has to burn calories to create heat. So now it's not all obviously about just losing weight. It's as much about eating clean and supplementing where necessary, and all, of course, in accordance whatever sort of dietary plan you and your physician lay out.
Sure.
But I mean, eating clean, man, it's such an important thing. And you can see the difference in people who are 50 and have maintained their health and people who are 50 and haven't. It's like night and day. You know,
it's almost like there's kind of a hidden, and it's not really secretive, but it is a little bit elusive, that you, of course, you're born into this world and you have to eat to survive. But there's like a magic peak in this roller coaster that the older you get, the less you eat, the longer you're going to live, to the point where the elderly, if they keep it down to like 800 calories a day, they actually live longer than an older person who was eating 2000 calories a day. So I think that's one of those things that really drew me into intermittent fasting. You're not doing calorie restriction, but there is some scientific backing to the fact that once you reach that time period, that like 14 hours of your 16-hour fast, or excuse me, your 18-hour fast, once you reach that point, things are activating in your body. Like it actually activates your body to go, and it can fight like cancer cells. It can stop those types of things from growing and do all sorts of great things. I know, Cliff, you were going to talk a little bit about intermittent fasting. Did you have something you wanted to add there?
Well, yeah, I was going to say that I think that intermittent fasting is probably the diet of preppers, especially like if the grid is down, for example, and things are a little bit scarce. I think it'd be good to practice now to see if you could do that, because you might only have like that really big meal every so days or so. Yeah. I know in a lot of years back, I used to try a lot of the emergency food ration bars and see if I could go for 72 hours on this certain calorie. And one of them was I did Soylent and all sorts of other weird stuff too. But I felt that like after like that day 3, or I felt like I was almost not looking forward to eating normal food again, because I felt that once you get into that kind of diet, I realized how much my day-to-day just revolves around, oh, what am I going to eat for breakfast? What I'm going to have for lunch? Oh, I can't wait to have that thing for dinner. Oh, I can't wait to drink that later tonight. And when you are on a restricted diet like that, that's totally gone, and it's almost freeing in a way. It's like a weight off of you that you don't have to why am I so bothered? Why am I always spending all my time just thinking about those kind of things when I could be doing other things? So,
Geez, you guys got me all excited. Y'all are encouraging me because I need to drop a few pounds. So
I've been over the past month, I've been waking up before the kids and going on the rowing machine and trying to get some cardio in that way. And
Awesome.
the big thing that I've been happy about is getting off of caffeine. So over the past month, I totally got off of caffeine, which is, I was in a bad cycle where basically, you're working all day and drinking caffeine to stay awake, and then you're buzzed all at night, and then drinking some bourbon to go to bed. So I was willing to get rid of the caffeine, but not the bourbon. So we're still working on it.
Yeah, okay. I did see that on your Twitter. You were saying you're not giving up the bourbon yet.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it more social bourbon, but not by myself bourbon.
Well, interestingly, if we're talking about like societal regression back to some more primitive mode of being in a collapse scenario, I'm pretty sure there's a biological mechanism that's associated with intermittent fasting that actually increases your alertness and your physical capabilities after you've fasted for so long. Because historically, when you're hunting and you're hungry, you kind of really, it's a life or death situation, right?
Yeah.
So your body knows when it's hungry that it needs to be acutely aware of what's going on. So, with respect to prepping, there's a benefit in not being a glutton if you're on the watch. There's a benefit to limiting and restricting calories if you need to be vigilant. You have your sensual sense, your sensory acuity, about you. So, I just think it's a very important thing, like you said.
Well, I think when Cliff talked about the fact that, and we all feel that. I mean, I feel that. I'm sure you guys do, that your day kind of revolves, unless you remove that part of your life, that your day revolves around your meals. And even my wife and I were like, hey, what do you want to make for dinner later? It becomes a talking point plus something that you're thinking about. So when you said you're sure that there's scientific backing to it, I mean, that's it right there. If you've got a guy sitting on watch, supposed to be watching a field or listening to communications, but all he's thinking about is, whatever he's opening up to eat, or the beef stew or whatever, and not committed to that time of fasting, that period of fasting, that's definitely taking your views and your idea away from watching like you're supposed to. So I think even not the hunter going out to hunt food, everybody in your whole group can benefit from that type of change.
Cliff, did you want to conclude any other final points and thoughts about what we've talked about with respect to supply chain disruptions, what you're doing the next few months here to prepare before, because I know you have to go?
Yeah, well, not really. I'm trying to do the same. I try not to fluctuate my preparedness steps based off of news cycles and stuff. I'm still doing what I always have done, is, prepping food and getting the medical stuff. And because I'm constantly worried about these kind of things, even, 5 years ago. So there's a greater sense of urgency now. And as Chris was saying, it feels, I don't know what the other side's going to look like. And it doesn't feel like it's that good. So I just feel, and I think I've kind of battled over the past year or two just with overall anxiety from a preparedness standpoint. I'm not feeling prepared for all these different things, and preparedness is such a vast topic. I mean, you could go all full on ham radio and just be in that world for a while, or you could be full on, gardening, or you could be full on tactical person, or full on medical. And it's just like, there's all these different things, and I feel like I don't have a closure with any of them if I don't like get them on a PDF and get them settled, put the video and okay, I'm at peace at this one. Now it's time to tackle this. So normally it felt like you can manage that and juggle that more, but now it's like I'm juggling in warp speed, and it's harder to focus. But as far as supply chains and inflation and all those things, I'm concerned about it, and I'm more concerned than previously. And things seem to be, previously my preparedness seemed like I was going 35 miles an hour. Now it feels freeway speed and speeding up. So
right.
It's like what accelerated expansion of the universe. Like it's going faster than the speed of light now. So and that's just what it kind of feels like for me preparing. So
it's crazy talking to people. Yeah, it's crazy talking to people. That, like, a family member of mine, he was asking me a bunch of questions about solar and battery systems, and whole home battery backups, and power stuff. And we were talking it through, and he's like, yeah, neighbors that I have are starting to put in generators like the whole home propane generators. I looked at getting one last year, ran into permitting issues, and I decided to go solar with a battery system in our garage, which has worked out great. It's fascinating because I don't know if this is just his experience or others are seeing it, but he was like, he's like, yeah, I started trying to get quotes for a Generac, battery or a propane generator. And he's like, they're 9-10 months out because people are beginning, this is Texas. He lives in Texas, which is probably important to point out as well. They're always having grid problems down there. And all that to say, it just, that again, that's my concern is that if people really, because I think there is still a state of denial that a lot of people are living in that we will come out and it may very well. And I hate to, again, be the eternal pessimist. I usually try to be optimistic more, but it's been increasingly difficult as of late. And I don't know. I think people, once they begin to realize that things may not change, that this may be the new normal and it may only get more challenging. I don't know. I think it's just going to be really hard for a lot of people. And you'll probably see a lot of higher, like what Nate's saying, you'll see an increase in spike in demand. And these things that we could get now pretty easily for pretty affordable prices, those prices may double or triple, especially if there becomes a black market for some of these.
Yeah, right. Nate, I forgot. What was the name of that website again?
Preparedness.com.
Okay, so over.
All right.
Just Google put Canadian Prepper on Google, and if they're feeling generous that day, my name might come up and maybe my website too. So
is there a preparedness coupon code that we should use?
Survival Prepper, 10% off. But actually, I might be getting rid of the coupon codes because the way the prices are rising, or I might just have to raise the prices and that way I'm just, it doesn't really make sense. So
right.
If I'm giving people a coupon code, I want it to actually do something as opposed to me having to raise the prices. Yeah. But one other thing I just wanted to say on the inflation, and one thing we have to be mindful of is right now we're seeing Bitcoin go up. Yep. We're seeing the markets in perpetual, increase, it seems. But it's all very illusory because if the price of everything is going up, then are the markets really going up? There's something called a market melt up that people should look into. Yep. And it's the idea that, the market, if you're just because the market isn't crashing doesn't mean it's not crashing. Because if inflation is going up, then all the prices of these stocks are just getting inflated. And the same thing could be happening with Bitcoin. And I think that's what's fueling a lot of the Bitcoin hype lately is concerns over inflation, even though today it's down like quite a bit. But, overall, it's been on a tear again. And so, that concerns me because we're not really going to know. And we're just in this a postmodern age of everything. We don't know what's happening with the virus. We don't know what's happening with the economy because there's all this mixed messaging. And, now we have this market, which is seemingly doing okay, but not when you compare it to the actual inflation that you're seeing in the store. Like if you compare it to like silky saws, price of silky saws has went up 20%. Well, so has the market. So has the market really went up?
Yeah, right.
So it's very difficult right now to gauge what sort of situation we're in. And if we did have a crash, that would make it monumentally worse because that would mean that not only were you out the inflation, but all your stocks have now deflated. And so it's just going to be a big mess. So I think gold and silver, I still think they're going to have their day at some point here. I don't think it's over for them yet. So, but I'm diversified as far as that goes. Bitcoin, gold, silver, everything.
Do you think that, do you think that we could talk about crypto in a future video and kind of touch on that?
Yeah, I can talk about that all night. I have to be careful about that.
Okay.
I love crypto. Yeah.
I think we should, because from a personal perspective, I try anytime I'm investing in something, and I'm talking small investment, I try to make sure that I'm going to get a pretty decent return on my investment. That could be money that I'm putting into something, or even my time. If I'm going to be helping somebody, I'm going to try and get a return on my investment, whether it's my personal feelings or sentiment out of helping them, or have them come help me with something else. So I'm always back and forth in that. And crypto, I got into, I always say, I call it doggy coin. I'm sorry. It's never going to get through my head to not call it doggy coin. You know, but I was in Bitcoin years and years and years ago, just messing around. I think I put in like $500, like, you know, just 6 years ago, maybe. And I logged back in when I was going to get into, you know, Dogecoin. And I was like, oh man, where'd this money come from? Because it was just, I forgot all about it, you know, and there it was. And so I think that there's still opportunity right now, but me, I'm hesitant because I want to actually, I don't want to do like the stock markets where, yeah, you know, great, I put in $2,000 and I got $20, you know, that's really awesome. No, I want to actually see a gain. So maybe you guys can kind of help push me over the ledge there to make some decisions, or anybody else who's watching.
Yeah, all I would say about crypto, and it's, did we lose Brad? Did he freeze up?
Freeze up. He should be back.
Yeah. Looks like he's thinking about something. Okay, Brad, we got you back.
Yeah, no, I was deep in thought there. I'm sorry.
It was catatonic when he's thinking deeply.
Yeah.
No, all I'll say about crypto is just, you know, I've been in it for a little while, and I wish I'd been in way longer. I'll put it that way. But a couple of things. I mean, you really have to take a long-term perspective with it. If you're willing to take 5 to 10 years, which is my position, you know, I'm not overly nervous. It is incredibly volatile. So if you're in for the shorts, you know, short periods, you got to be really careful. The best YouTube channel I found on the issue, or rather on the subject matter, is this gentleman named Benjamin Cohen. He's got a channel called Into the Cryptoverse. He's this, you know, PhD mathematician guy, and he just looks at it from a very, very, very analytical position. I would say 99% of crypto YouTube channels are hopium. They just pump nonstop. We're going to the moon, you know, and it's just, we're going to get rich. And a lot of them have actually been caught doing pump and dump. So they'll pump up a coin. And then as soon as the video comes out, they'll dump their position. Everybody goes to run it, you know, buys it. I mean, then they'll dump, you know, and so he's the only one that I trust at this point into the cryptoverse. So you might want to check that out. He got a lot of good information from there.
Kelly and I did a little bit of messing around where we had done some kind of programmatic trading off of some stuff that we had built, but you know, I wasn't willing to really risk putting a lot in to watch the candlesticks and kind of, you know, see what was happening and then make some decisions to get out before the market was kind of move it. Have you guys ever looked into any of that kind of on the day kind of day trading crypto?
Yeah, my accountant, he it's so funny because several months ago, you know, he knows my position in crypto. He knows my finances, and he was kind of making fun of it a few months ago. And then I talked to him a month ago, and he was like, yeah, I've got some software, or there's a company, I'll send it to you, Brad, and we can probably talk about it in the next meeting, but it's all automated. It's all AI. You pay a subscription fee, but it runs, you know, the daily, just does all these hundreds of micro trades all day. And nice. He's done pretty well off of it. I do investments, not trading. I just look at the long-term picture. I'm way too nervous to trade with that.
Yeah, right. Well, I did it. I kind of treated it like my.
Go ahead.
I kind of treated it like my grandfather, who I shouldn't model anything off of him because he was just a rampant, you know, lottery buyer and dog. You know, would go to the dog races and just spend all his money, but he would only spend the money he made on the next one. So he'd take his initial investment and then try to, you know, not get in the hole. But that's how I've kind of tried to do the day trading is, okay, well, if I made $50, made $60, next time I'll just only use that. If I made $200 next time, I'll just use that. So yeah, definitely. I think maybe we could make a whole video about this in the next meeting and talk about crypto and see if that's a viable option for people who are trying to get ahead of an otherwise disastrous financial event.
Yeah, I know, Nate, we've done some videos kind of going back and forth, and it's, it's so, you have to be so careful talking about crypto because it's speculative. There's still a lot that's unknown. I think long-term you'll do well, but you have to be careful in the short term.
Yeah, I'd be glad to play the devil's advocate for that video because I've done a lot of videos in which I'm critical of Bitcoin, but I also see both sides of the point, right?
Okay.
So
I hope I didn't get Cliff in trouble because I know you were buying it back in May when it was at its height, its peak.
I don't even follow I'm probably like the odd one out because I don't really follow the peaks and everything. I just have scheduled, it goes into it a few times a month, and then I do the same thing with precious metals too. So I don't even look at it, and I just move stuff over to my hardware wallet and then be done with it. So
Oh, nice.
I'll
I'd like
finish
to
with
hear
this.
about
Yeah, I'll finish with this story. My best friend, he got into Bitcoin when it came out, and he was buying a lot of it at $30, and he sold all of it at about around $140 because there were some moves he wanted to make back then. And he was like, "Well, great, I've had a good return, right? I mean, I bought at 30, sold at 140," and so we were sitting down doing the numbers the other day, and I was like, "Oh my God, if you'd have held those coins, you would be worth this amount today. He'd be way past retirement." So
Yeah.
he's like, I guess the message is hodl, just hold on. So
Yeah, right.
yeah. So you never know.
It's the message sometimes, and this is where we don't want to be giving out financial advice, but
Sure.
there's still ways this could go wrong, and I would caution against day trading in the sense that 90% of day traders apparently lose money, and I don't think that's going to be any different with crypto. I'm very if there was an algorithm that could just make people money, everybody would use it, right? So I'm very skeptical of things like that, and I would be very cautious against any algorithm which I had to pay for and doing these micro trades. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
If it was that easy, everybody would do it. So
same reason I don't touch it. Yeah, I agree 100%. I don't touch trading. I just think it's way too risky. I take long-term positions. Yeah.
I mean, hodling makes sense, and if people don't know what that is, that's just a meme for holding. What is it? Holding on for dear life? Is that what it is?
Yeah, just holding. I mean, you basically don't sell.
Yeah, right. Well, good. I think that would be a good thing for us to bring up next time. And if anyone didn't have anything else to add, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking part of your day to sit down here with us and talk about all the things that we have discussed. Please subscribe to us here at Think Preparedness. And if, I'm never big on saying, please share this to other platforms, but Nate and Chris and Cliff said that I better get big on that. So please, if you like this video, take the link and share it on a different platform with someone else. That will really help our entire community grow. Make sure that you leave a comment and let's engage each other. I tried to come back. Yeah, and a thumbs up. I tried to come back and I tried to give a heart to every video or every comment that came on here. And we're at something like 1.6 thousand last time. And I was literally there like 30, 40 minutes, just hearting every comment that was there at that point in time. So please make sure that you engage with us here. And I want to just say, please get ready for what's coming, because none of us know what's going to happen next. So from each one of us to your families, stay safe.